Hi, my name's Kayla Maltman, and I recently finished the class, The Psychology of Aging. And before I took this class, I really had no idea what the psychology of aging was. So I'll start this presentation by giving off an explanation of that, and then I'll get into some of the topics within it that I thought were the most interesting, and the ones that I also think personally are the most relevant. So the psychology of aging presents and examines aging and the aging process from a psychological standpoint. So aging has both physical and psychological changes and milestones. And these aspects are going to influence both our perspective on aging as well as our experience with aging. So aging is marked very differently across cultures. For some people, old is when you reach like retirement age and are no longer in the workforce. For some, it's when your children leave the nest and they have kids and you become a grandparent. And ideas and beliefs around aging also change over time. So in our modern society, we have much more advanced medical technology that greatly was able to increase the human lifespan. And it also was able to keep people healthier as they age. So in the past, old might have only been seen as like 30 or 40 years old. And now we can view old as more of like the age of retirement. That is kind of a common viewpoint in the US. And also the age of retirement has even become older as time goes on. So since aging is marked so differently across cultures, it also means that people's mindsets about aging, as well as just their general beliefs about older adults, are also different. So this is where we get into our first relevant topic, which is stigma around aging. So American society especially tends to view aging in a somewhat negative light, especially when it comes to regarding women. For example, there's so many beauty and skincare products that market themselves as this like miracle anti-aging drug. And this marketing has honestly really instilled fear into a lot of people. So marketing influences a lot of your subconscious beliefs. So we don't really even realizing that we're taking in this information and believing it. So people might believe that they're less important or less valued in society if they age. So this specific form of aging stigma focuses more on like the physical features of the way someone looks. Um, Such as like their skin, their hair, how youthful they look. However, the stigma actually goes a lot deeper than just this surface level. So there's also a lot of misconceptions around older adults' capabilities. People often believe that once you reach a certain age, that's considered old. You lose all the ability to live an independent and meaningful life. However, this is just not true. While there can be higher risks for things like dementia or Alzheimer's, it doesn't necessarily mean that all older adults are going to experience this type of rapid cognitive decline. So that's where we get to our next topic because stigma around aging, unfortunately, is going to lead to ageism. So ageism is another topic within the psychology of aging that I think is pretty relevant to today's society. And I just want to point out that any age group can be the target of ageism. For example, a lot of people assume that teenagers are kind of like moody and not very smart and aren't going to be as good at like their high school job compared to an adult. However, ageism definitely predominantly targets older adults and seniors. And I'll admit that before taking this course, I hadn't really considered much about ageism. It's not something that's currently affecting me, although it probably will in the future. And so people should care about it even if they're not currently being affected by it. So because of the stigma around aging, a lot of people, myself included, have probably had moments where they assume the abilities of an older adult and are ageist against them. A lot of people think that seniors will not be valuable in the workplace or that they might be really out of touch with current times. And this is where the idea of biases comes in. So someone might have a particular experience with an older person, and then they're going to make a broad generalization about the entire population just based on this one singular experience. And the thing about biases is a lot of the times they're subconscious, so we don't even know that we're doing it. It's not like people go into a situation wanting to be ageist and offensive, but society just kind of has normalized a lot of these false beliefs. And stigma has also led to people being afraid to talk about certain aspects of just getting older, especially when it comes to death. It's pretty normal to fear death, And I would assume that even if you do not currently fear death, you probably did at points in the past or might even briefly experience this fear in the future. It's a pretty common thing for humans because death is something we can't really quite wrap our heads around. So this leads to the topic of assisted suicide, and currently this is a pretty hot topic, especially in the United States. People have pretty differing views on it. Some people think that life should never be intentionally ended, and others believe that it's up to just like the individual and their doctor, and if they don't want to continue their suffering, they have the right to choose that simply as just like another form of healthcare. So, although people do disagree on the topic, it's still important to have these types of conversations, especially with your family. So, while this fear of aging, we have this fear, people often want to try to find ways to stay young and fit. And while we can't stop aging, there's a lot of things people can do to stay aging successfully and gracefully. So in this class, I learned that one of the most important and effective ways to successfully age is to stay physically fit and to stay active. So being fit can improve your mobility, which is one of the biggest factors in whether or not someone stays living independently or has to go live in an assisted living facility. And these changes, physical changes, can also really, really improve someone's mental health. Unfortunately, right now, there's kind of a mental health crisis with older adults, and many of them are going to face some sort of mental illness in their life. And stigma around this also plays a role because adults pretty much grew up being told that it was really shameful to reach out for help or to talk openly about their mental health. As someone is active and improving their mental health, they're a lot more likely to get outside and engage with the community, which this is going to improve their mental health even more. So a big factor in the mental health epidemic among seniors is just the loneliness and isolation that can come with getting old. Activities such as walking clubs or like a workout class at the gym are really great ways for elderly people to not only just increase their mobility and their fitness, but it also gives them the opportunity to form community with like-minded people and people their own age. I also do think that everyone, regardless of age, could greatly benefit from group athletic and fitness activities, and it also could help build healthy habits. So you might be wondering if isolation and loneliness is such a big issue in the elderly community, what's going to happen to the adults who either physically can't engage in the community or live in a rural area where they don't necessarily have those extracurricular activities? So the answer for this might sound a little surprising, but it might actually be technology. So oftentimes we assume that older adults just have no interest in technology. However, I believe that's actually because they might not fully understand it or know how to use it. So people often make fun of seniors and joke that they're really bad at technology, instead of taking the time to think about why this might be. So people my age grew up with technology. For us, it's basically as simple as breathing, and as we grew and developed, the technology also did. So there wasn't really ever a time where people my age didn't know how to implement technology into their life. However, for someone who grew up with technology like cell phones or even laptops, the idea is probably overwhelming and overstimulating, and the idea of getting into something new as a senior can feel pretty daunting. So in recent years, there have been classes at community centers to help teach seniors how to use technology. So technology can help seniors and their families because it gives older adults a way to stay in touch with their family and friends, which is great if they live far away or if they live alone or if they live in an assisted living facility. And for example, my grandma uses social media and her phone a lot and is probably more connected to her community and social than even I am as a college student, which when I thought about that, it was kind of surprising, but it also shows just the way that technology can positively impact older adults. It can also give families just a peace of mind that their loved one is able to quickly call for help or contact them, and they can also use technology for a medical emergency because we have technology now to track things like heart rate and blood pressure. So it's really important to teach elderly people about how to use technology, but also the risks because seniors are at a pretty high risk for scams on the internet. So just some closing thoughts about the psychology of aging. I think that our society really should work towards educating people more on it. Fear is often, in my opinion, just a lack of education, and we need to educate people on the resources and services that are going to be available to them as they age. During my research on some of the papers for this class, I noticed that it's not necessarily that seniors don't want support, but they really just don't know that the support exists, and if they do, they don't know how to access it. So there are so many positive aspects to aging and growing up, and over time, even things like your personality can change. So this class really made me reflect on my own misconceptions about aging, and it helped me see that it's really a privilege to age. I also now know how to prepare myself for getting older, and having this education and talking openly about aging can take away a lot of the fear around aging. Thank you for listening to my presentation, and I hope that you learned something today.